Hey, good afternoon to you. 306 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour at 3:30, Richard Goldberg joins us from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. We'll talk about a strike in Tehran killing an Hamas leader overnight, a big attack. What comes next? Will this escalate more? Richard Goldberg comes at 3:30 to discuss. Todd Bensman is here at 4:30. We've got an update on those Jordanian nationals who rammed into the gate at Marine Corps Base Quantico. That's coming up. And then at 5 o'clock, John Lott is here as Kamala Harris makes it really clear she's coming for the guns. Not a big fan of liberty. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Speaking of Kamala Harris, she has blown off the National Association of Black Journalists. It's a part of her long-running effort not to sit down for any interview anywhere. In her entire presidential campaign, which is stretching on for about 10 days now, she has not done an interview. She has not taken any impromptu questions, nothing. She refuses to put herself in unscripted moments, or if it's not her, the people around her are refusing to let that happen for fear that she's going to go off script. You know, she had a big speech yesterday in Georgia, and on script, if you knew nothing about her, if you didn't know anything about her record, if you didn't connect the misery within this country to the policies on top, well, then you might think she did a great job. They filled the room with a bunch of musicians and people who were very excited to see her, very excited, especially on the left, not to have Biden in the race. But these are the scripted moments. These are the scripted moments. What about the unscripted ones? Well, right now, the Kamala campaign doesn't think she's ready for those. So they have rejected an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists. But they ran into a little bit of a problem because Trump accepted. Trump accepted an in-person interview with the National Association of Black Journalists. They sought both campaigns, and he said, sure, I'll do it. And when he had asked, apparently, whether or not it would be okay if he did it virtually, they said, no, you have to do this in person. So when Kamala's campaign finds out that Trump is doing it, they say, okay, we'll do it, but we'll do it virtually, okay? We'll be there virtually? And they said, no, you can't do that. You've got to be here in person. And she didn't. They refused. They refused to send her. So here, that brings us to today. And certainly within the National Association of Black Journalists, there's apparently a bunch of lefties who work there, including the former co-chair, Karen Attiah, who just quit in a huff overnight. She's so angry that they're interviewing. Again, this is a group of journalists. The whole point is journalism. You gather facts, you disseminate them. She's furious that they're doing an interview with the leading candidate for president of the United States. That's how insane things are. So she resigned in a huff in her emotional incontinence about all of this. Trump arrived today, and the event did not begin on time. There were fake reports online that Trump was upset about real-time fact-checking, and they were going to do some real-time fact-checking. He was objecting to that, which was horse hockey. Trump himself shared on Truth Social today that the reason this thing is delayed, he goes, I've been here for half an hour, he said on Truth Social. They haven't started because their audio equipment doesn't work. So I'm waiting for them to fix their audio equipment. Eventually, it is working. And there are a couple of people there are three reporters on stage, three of them versus Donald Trump, President Trump by himself. And that's fine. He doesn't mind that. And among the people who are on stage are ABC's Rachel Scott, Fox News' Harris Faulkner, and then from Semaphore, a woman named Kadeo Goba are on stage. Now, let me begin with why they reached out to Trump in the first place. Ken Lemon, the president of the National Association of Black Journalists, had this to say.
It's absolutely not an endorsement. The first thing that you read when we put out that release says it's not an endorsement. Every year, every presidential election cycle, we invite the presidential candidates.
As you should.
We extend that to anyone who is a nominee.
As you should.
And in this case, we have two presumptive nominees.
Well, actually, you have one nominee and one presumptive nominee.
We invited both of them. We got a yes from one of them. We'd love to get a yes from Kamala as well, but in this case, this is an important hour. We have people whose lives are depending on what happens in November. For us as journalists, people who go into and have very uncomfortable conversations for the sake of our members, this is an important time. this is a great opportunity for.
Yeah, of course it's a great opportunity. You get to question a former president and perhaps a future president of the United States. You get to do it on behalf of the American people. That's the whole point of journalism. Now, I should point out that this group, it's pretty evident as you listen to this audio, is a left-wing group for the most part. The membership, this is the journalism class of people. It's not a representative sample of the entire country. It's a very specific subset. It's self-important journalists, mostly, in the room. Here's Rachel Scott leading things off. After a half hour of delay for technical difficulties, they sit down and she fires right into this.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist.
You know, I didn't know that Jim Acosta was black. I had no idea.
You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country.
Some enthusiastic clapping, by the way. Again, I have no idea who's in the room, but it does sound like a small number of people.
Employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and, you know, and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke. And I saved them.
Yeah, so he talks about the money he was able to get to HBCUs. But, of course, this Rachel Scott character in particular, she had the knives out for Trump. This was all just left-wing claptrap, pablum, lies, hoaxes, and she just pouring out of her mouth. And she doesn't even pause for a moment.
I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, you know, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was wrong.
Mr. President, I would love if you can answer the question on your rhetoric and why you believe that black voters should trust you with another 4 years.
I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
I think it's a disgrace, Trump says. So he's not shy at all about going after the people who treat him like crap, as Rachel Scott of ABC decides that that's going to be her tact here. It doesn't yield information. It just draws him into a fight with you because you've declared immediately that you're a partisan political hack. Here's more from Rachel Scott and the mix-up she's having with President Trump today.
Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
Also, will you tell Joe Biden to stop it? Joe Biden's the one who said he was hiring her because she's black. That's what he said back in 2020.
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
Give me
a definition then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir, I'm asking you a question, a very direct question.
Define it for me, if you
would. I just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
But you know
identified
what?
as a black woman.
I
She went to
respect
a
either
black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn, and she became a black person.
Just to be clear.
Oh, that's too much. Anyway, eventually Harris Faulkner jumps in here from the Fox News channel, and she begins with a simple question and for her portion. Why did you come to this room? What is your message?
In this moment where we are, why come here? What is your message today?
My message is to stop people from invading our country that are taking, frankly, a lot of problems with it. But one of the big problems, and a lot of the journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
And
Mr. President,
they're taking the employment away from black people. They're coming in, they're invading. It's an invasion of millions of people, probably 15, 16, 17 million people. I have a feeling it's much more than that.
Yeah, you heard her pause on that what is a black job? The left, they live in this weird bubble where they come up with their own themes, and then they whip themselves into a frenzy. And recently they took a Trump's reference to black jobs out of context and suggested that he was saying that only certain jobs are for black people. He never said that. Did you ever check with him to see if that's what he meant when he said the word black jobs? No, of course not. They just whipped themselves into a frenzy. And of course, what he was talking about was black workers. That's what he's talking about. Black workers. And black workers are disproportionately being absolutely decimated by illegal labor pouring into our country. And so anybody who's going to dare run for the presidency, if you care at all about policy, if you care at all about the country getting back on track, you should care about that issue. And so the snickering you hear, the patronizing tone you hear from like Rachel Scott, she doesn't give a crap about that. She doesn't care about the well-being of the average black person. Trump is making the case right in front of her, and she's trying to like turn it into something negative. It's really despicable, actually. And so Harris Faulkner, to the extent that anyone was able to yield anything, she says, why are you coming to this room? You're speaking to the National Association of Black Journalists. And Trump instantly speaks to a universal message here that does have a deep impact on black Americans. And he says, inflation. The costs are skyrocketing. People are suffering. People are losing their jobs, in particular black Americans. You always talk about disproportionate impact. They're disproportionately being impacted by this savagery. So we should put an end to it. We should put an end to it. So Harris Faulkner, by asking a basic setup question, which is like, why are you here, is able to yield something far more useful than Rachel Scott's goofy, invented, hoax-driven attacks on Trump, as if she is merely a spokeswoman for Kamala's campaign and not a journalist. I don't even know why she's a member of an organization that calls itself an association of journalists, because that's not the role she even began to serve on that stage. All right, hold on. I've got more for you. It's kind of fascinating.
And I said, isn't that something? He's incompetent and he can't stand trial, and yet he can be president. Isn't that nice?
Mr. President,
but they released him on the basis that he was incompetent. They said he had no memory, and he was a nice old guy, but he had no memory, and therefore we're not going to prosecute him. I won the case, and it got very little publicity. I didn't notice ABC doing any publicity on it, George.
We covered you extensively, sir. I'd love to move over on to different topics.
I didn't notice you do any publicity on it at all. I won the case, the biggest case. This is an attack on a political opponent. I have another one where
sir,
I have a hostile judge.
We have you for a limited time, sir. I'd love to move on to different topics.
Excuse you. You're the one that held me up for 35 minutes, just so you understand.
So that went well. That's President Trump talking about what has been happening to him, all of the legal fights that he's been mired in because the left is trying to stop his presidential campaign. And he points out, he goes, hey, Robert Hur said that Biden stole all these documents, but he was too incompetent to stand trial. So how is he president of the United States? And how come ABC didn't cover in any meaningful way that case against me, the classified documents case against me that the Biden administration launched, was thrown out in court in that federal court in Florida? How come I'm not seeing, a lot of big coverage of that? What's going on there? George Slapadopoulos, you heard him say. So once again, realizing you don't have to play by the rules that these press people lay out in front of you. You make your own rules. You carve your own path as you answer these questions. You talk about these things on your own terms, and rightfully so. Here is another one from ABC's Rachel Scott saying, J.D. Vance said some stuff about cat ladies. What do you say about that?
Sir, I want to get back to the campaign. Senator J.D. Vance is your running mate. He's had a lot of controversy lately, and I want to read you a few things that he has said in the past. He said the Democrats running the country are a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. He's not talking here about how great it is to be a parent. He's attacking what he says are the choices people are making to not have children.
Listen, do you see what she's doing? She's prejudicing the entire question. She's saying that he's not talking about having families, which of course he was.
Know that he had these views about people who do not have children before you picked him to be your running mate, and do you agree
false
with him?
frame.
No, I know this. He is very family-oriented, and he thinks family is a great thing. That doesn't mean he thinks that if you don't have a family, it's not. I know people with families. I know people with great families. I know people with very troubled families.
Of course.
And I also know people with no families. They didn't meet the right person. Things happen. You go through life, you don't meet the right person.
But he's not just talking about families here. He also says that people
How about you don't speak for him, dummy? How about you let him speak for himself?
don't have children should get less votes than
That's
those
all right.
that do.
I'm just speaking for myself.
Is that your
and I
campaign
think
position?
I'm speaking for him, too. He strongly believes in family. But I know people with great families. I know people with not great families that don't have a family. And the people without the family are far better. They're superior in many cases, okay?
Everything that came out of that lady's mouth was a scam. Even the thing, she was like, why should people who have kids have more votes? Well, no, the kids are represented in the votes in the theory, in his idea. One person, one vote. You lunatic. Coming up, Richard Goldberg is going to be with us from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. The Israelis just killed a Hamas leader, the Hamas leader, right in the middle of Tehran. A big story. What comes next? We'll talk about it. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 3:35, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up, Todd Bensman will join us. It's from the Center for Immigration Studies at 4:30. We'll get the update on the names of those illegal alien Jordanian nationals who tried to bust their way into Quantico Marine Corps Base. Todd Bensman with a big update there. And then John Lott is here at 5 o'clock from the Crime Prevention Research Center. We'll talk to him about Kamala Harris's efforts to disarm Americans. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Big news overnight as the leader of Hamas was assassinated in the Iranian capital, was killed in the Iranian capital. Early Wednesday morning, Reuters with this report, an attack that drew threats of revenge on Israel and fueled further concern that the conflict in Gaza was turning into a wider Middle East war. The New York Times reporting at this hour that Iran's leader, its supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has ordered a retaliatory strike now on Israel. Iran's leader is ordering an attack on Israel for the killing of that Hamas leader, officials say. For more on all of this, what's happening and what might come next, let's turn to Richard Goldberg now. He's a senior advisor for the Foundation of Defense for Democracies and joins us now. Sir, good to have you with us, sir. Richard, can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I hear you great. Thank you for joining me today. Let's go over the basics here. First and foremost, it looks like this is the second of two really consequential terror leaders that the Israelis have picked off in the last few weeks.
These two men have a lot of American.
All right, Richard's connection not so good. All right, let's hang up on Richard and give him a call back. I'd like to see if we can establish a better connection to him. Unfortunately, that didn't work at the gate. So what I was referencing is that Israel has now just taken out the leader of Hamas, who was in Iran, in Tehran, for the new president's inauguration. And so the Israelis must have said, okay, well, we know where he is. We know this is our chance. Let's take him out. And they had a targeted strike on the residence he was staying in there. Additionally, they have recently taken out a major commander for Hezbollah in Lebanon. So here you have Israel fighting back against these Iranian proxy groups, these terror organizations that are constantly warring with Israel, conducting terror attacks on Israel. And Richard Goldberg joins us again now. Richard, can you hear me okay?
Again.
Okay, good. So what do you make of this? You said that these men have American blood on their hands as well. Maybe, is that a problem with our phone system? Do we know? Well, there's Richard Goldberg. Richard, are you there with me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm so sorry that our system doesn't seem to be working so well today. One more time, and if it doesn't work, we'll call it a day. But tell me about these men that the Israelis have now taken out.
The top operational commander for Hezbollah was involved all the way back in 1983 in killing 200.
Yeah. All right. I'm so sorry to Richard. It's not his fault. It's a connection issue, and hopefully it doesn't endure for the rest of our program. It might be on our side. Not clear on that, but we'll have to bid him farewell. And thank you, Richard. Sorry for the inconvenience of getting you on the interview and the system not working here. What he's referencing is the role that Hezbollah commander played in the Beirut bombing back in 1983, killing so many Americans, so many Marines at that barracks. And the Israelis have taken him out. So the overarching question here that we have to assess is what comes next as a result of all of this. As I mentioned, the Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran, has issued an order now for Iran to strike Israel directly. It's not the first time. We saw this recently. Remember a barrage of missiles coming into Iran, into Israel, the Iron Dome in Israel, protecting that country rather successfully in some very impressive footage that we got to see here across the Atlantic as we watched what happened on that as that strike was turned away by that amazing Israeli Iron Dome. Mr. Khamenei, the New York Times says, gave the order at an emergency meeting of Iran's Supreme National Security Council on Wednesday morning, shortly after Iran announced that Mr. Haniyeh, that's the leader of Hamas, had been killed, said the three Iranian officials, including two members of the Revolutionary Guard. They asked that their names not be published because they weren't authorized to speak publicly. Iran and Hamas have accused Israel of the assassination. Israel, which is at war with Hamas in the Gaza Strip, has neither acknowledged nor denied killing Mr. Haniyeh. Well, they clearly have the ability here, but they've neither acknowledged nor denied the killing of him, who was in Tehran for the inauguration of Iran's new president. Israel has a long history of killing enemies abroad, including Iranian nuclear scientists and military commanders. Through almost 10 months of war in Gaza, Iran has, I'm reading from the New York Times. This is their spin on this. Iran has tried to strike a balance, putting pressure on Israel with sharply increased attacks by its allies and proxy forces in the region, while avoiding an all-out war between the two nations. I did see there was a headline today to some effect that was like if, assuming, of course, that Israel is behind this strike, that Israel took out one of the peacekeepers, one of the people who are negotiating for peace. Like, how can they negotiate for peace and they're killing the leader of Hamas? Have you seen what Hamas is doing? Hamas, the terror group? So they took this guy out, apparently. And, I think he's kind of had a one-way ticket to hell for a while. They just sent him a little early, I guess. And so that's the update today. Where does this go from here? It's anybody's guess. And this is why, this matters a great deal, because if this continues to escalate wildly, that's the kind of thing that can draw the United States in to the defense of Israel in the Middle East. It really comes down to what is the scale of the response from Iran here. Israel, of course, is going to argue, we're responding to the terror attack on us. It's the reason we killed the guy. But you know that Iran has all of these desires. Can you imagine how badly they want to kill Netanyahu and the Israeli leadership? Very badly. Very badly. They want to kill Trump still. That's the big thing that we keep hearing, around the Trump assassination attempt by the 20-year-old up in Pennsylvania, is that because of the Soleimani strike, that there's still this bloodlust to kill Trump by the Iranians. So we'll keep our eyes on it. Again, the breaking news, the report at this hour is that Iran is now ordering a direct strike on Israel, that the supreme leader has ordered their own military. No more proxy stuff. The Iranians are taking a shot at Israel. If anything like that happens, I'll bring you updates. Let's see. Let's try our regular old phones. Let's see if they work. Chris is in Marshall right now, line 2. Chris, can you hear me?
I can hear you as well as Camilla.
Apparently it's our phone. Well, Chris helped answer my question. Chris is on the front line of the heartland, but they do have cell phone reception out there. I know that. So, yeah, Chris, I'm sorry, man. I can barely understand a word you're saying. I'm sorry, buddy. There's Chris. All right, so we're going to sort out the phone problems because there's quite a few people that I want to get to today, including Todd Bensman and John Lott coming up, and the goal is to make sure all of this happens. In the meantime, let me bring you back to some of the National Association of Black Journalists audio today. You've got President Trump was there. It wasn't entirely hostile. Harris Faulkner of the Fox News Channel was asking some very good, poignant, on-topic questions about what a Trump presidency would mean for the rest of us. Here's an exchange about inflation. President Trump, as I pointed out, they were having audio problems. He couldn't hear Harris Faulkner's question. So very much like what I just experienced with I can't even talk to my guest, Trump couldn't talk to Harris. The lefty journalists on stage had no problem, apparently, both conveying and hearing Trump. Harris Faulkner and Donald Trump were separated by some weird audio problem. Take a listen.
How do you turn it around? What's your plan for the black community when it comes to money?
So, first of all, it's very hard to hear you for whatever reason because of the fact that they have bad equipment, because I guess, this woman was unable to get the right equipment. But it's very hard for me to hear you, but I can hear
He blames Rachel Scott of ABC directly. It was like, she must have done a terrible job setting up the microphones, as if it was her job to set up the equipment, but whatever, she deserved it.
every other word. It's very difficult, actually. But so I don't know if they can fix it or do something with it, but I'll do the best I can with it. The inflation is absolutely destroying our middle class, our working class, virtually every class. Inflation is a disaster in our country. Inflation is a country buster. It breaks every country. And we had, in my opinion, the worst inflation we've had. They say it's 58 years, but I think it's much more than that. It's been devastating.
Yeah, it costs.
And if you just take...
People are so much poorer than they were when Joe Biden took the presidency. So much poorer now. And to the point, we've seen the numbers, something like 20% the costs have gone up. And that's in real terms. People, in other words, like whatever little wage increases the media likes to crow about, the wages are up. Not as much as prices. Not as much as prices. In other words, people are poorer. They can afford less now under Biden. And this is, of course, an important message for Trump to be extending. Because what do people care about? They care about the cost of living. They care about our borders. And to the extent that Trump could get a word out at all today on those subjects, he very much was hammering those.
Take a look at a lot of things they don't include, like interest rates. Interest rates went from 2.4% to 10%, and you can't get the money. People can't buy houses. They no longer have the American dream. Young people, young black people, they don't have the American dream anymore. They can't buy a house. They can't borrow the money because of the cost of the money. They can't buy it because of the cost of housing, because of the cost to build it, because of inflation. Inflation is a disaster, and it's destroying our country, and it's destroying the black community probably as much or more.
So what do you do?
Than any
What's your plan?
You know what we have to do? We have to bring down the cost of energy, and that's going to bring down the cost of inflation. This was all started with a bad energy policy by Joe Biden.
Totally right about that. Energy is one of those great issues that would improve so many other things. If you allow the oil to flow, if you allow the natural gas to flow, you obviously create human flourishing. People are able to have cheaper energy. They're able to afford their lives. They can keep the lights on. They don't have to unplug their electric car because there's not enough energy in the grid. All the stuff the left gives us. No, it's good. It's excellent for human flourishing. It keeps people alive. Energy. It's a very essential thing. keeps the air conditioning running, and in the winter keeps the heat going, especially if you rely on electric for that. And so what Trump is saying makes total sense. Also, the cost of goods are all affected. The cost to transport those goods, very importantly, are all affected by high energy costs. The lower you can make those costs, the lower the costs of all those goods and services. These are simple economic principles. The other piece is that our adversaries have been the big beneficiary of us artificially increasing the cost of our energy. So by limiting artificially the supply of energy that we have in the United States, all we're doing is empowering the worst authoritarian dictatorships around the world. The Putins, the Venezuelas. Anything interesting going on in Venezuela these days? The Venezuelas, the Irans, the Chinas, all of them. All of them. And so we've created this really dangerous world. Biden has, and Kamala has, created this very dangerous world where they have us on the brink of World War III, and they've empowered all of our adversaries with our suicidal energy policies. So if you tackle energy, if you make that your priority, if you do what Trump says, drill, baby, drill, well, then you begin to solve so many of these problems. You bring the costs down for everyone. You leave more money in their pockets. You make housing more affordable. You make the energy for those homes more affordable. You make the likeliness that our adversaries have the resources to prosecute wars against their neighbors or against us much less likely. So Trump is right about that. He's right about that. Trump also talked about how Biden just got replaced because he was losing badly and how unusual this is in American politics.
By the way, just if I might, I was running against a man named Biden. You probably saw that. And he was losing very badly in the polls. And then he had a rather bad debate. I would say it was a bad debate. I would say it was one of the worst debates in history. And his poll numbers crashed. And instead of saying, you know, let's keep going and maybe something happens the other way, they said, oh, we're going to replace him. Let's just replace him. That's like you're in a fight. A prize fighter's in a fight. He's not doing what you say, let's bring in another fighter. So our whole campaign was steered toward him, and now we have to steer toward him. But ultimately, it's the same because they have bad policy. They have policies of open borders, unbelievable open borders, horrible energy policies. They want to get rid of as you say, gasoline in cars. They want to get rid of oil. They want to get rid of efficient heating.
Mr. President.
Environmentally, what they're doing is killing our country. They're absolutely destroying our country. But the inflation is the thing that's hurting the black worker, the black population, and every other population within our country.
Yeah, he's, again, right about that. By the way, President Trump, he posted to Truth Social here a few minutes ago. He said the questions were rude and nasty, offered in the form of a statement, but we crushed it, he said, in all capital letters, exclamation point. So that's the after action report from President Trump. All right, forget the rest of the show. We'll just do tech support stuff for the whole time on the air. In fact, Chris in Marshall, Frontline of the Heartland, is our phone system working, Chris?
Is it working now? Can you hear me like Camilla can hear you?
Loud and clear. Apparently, the Frontline of the Heartland has better reception than the Heart of the Swamp, Chris.
Well, that's to be expected. And, you know, Camilla has been telling us all along that independent and recognizing the significance of the passage of time.
You know what I like about Chris? So, Chris, obviously, I'm going to Chris right now because I need his help with the phones. But Chris stuck with his topic from his call. He just wants to make fun of Kamala Harris, which
absolutely. There's so much material there.
I admire you very much for that. That's you stay on topic.
Humor's gonna be lit in the next couple of years because she's manifesting what she can be independently of what she has been in the past.
I know.
She's rewriting
I will say, Chris, I hope that you and I are not laughing a tremendous amount about Kamala Harris in the years to come, because my plan is not to think about her at all. With any luck, we're not going to have to
There's so much material, man.
even consider.
There's so much material.
But if things go poorly, we may be talking a lot, Chris. Thank you. I appreciate the call and the help. The phone system is working, which tells me that I'm having a conversation coming up in the next hour with Todd Bensman from the Center for Immigration Studies. Brand new information on those Jordanian illegals who tried to break their way into Marine Corps Base Quantico. Todd joins us, and we'll talk to you. That's ahead.